My name is Margaret Castellina. Oh, there I am. And this is my first time at Master Chefs, and oh my God. Don't clap. I should have been here years ago, so, that's bad on me. Before I go on to what I would like to share, I have to say, you guys are the best looking crowd I have ever had the privilege to speak at. But, in addition to how gorgeous you all are, these women's dresses, I want a list of where you went shopping. But what's more important is what I've noticed here tonight is your compassion and your heart, which is beyond anything I've ever seen. So please give all of you a round of applause for yourselves. Okay, the fact that I have to hold this is gonna be fun. Okay, so my name is Margaret Castellina, and the whole time I have an accent. I'm from New York. Don't hold that against me. I talk fast, so raise your hand if I'm going too fast. I will slow down. Oh, that would be wonderful. Can I do this? All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the one thing about New Yorkers is we talk with our hands, and then I'd have the microphone and it'd be going like this, and then you wouldn't hear me. You'd be like, why is she even up there? So anyway, my name is Margaret Castellina, and the whole time we came up here, I was like, okay, the theme is New Orleans, and it's let the good times roll. I was loving that. So I'm putting Ray Charles on the radio, and I'm listening, and I won't sing, so you're welcome. But the lyrics to the song, Let the Good Times Roll, is, now listen, you gotta get together, you gotta let the good times roll. Don't sit there mumbling, talking trash. If you wanna have a ball, you gotta go out, spend some cash. You gotta get together and let the good times roll. Ray Charles really knew what he was saying. So I kept thinking about, let the good times roll. But, in the road of life, letting the good times roll, there's always twists and turns. And it's never as simple as you quite think. And as a writer, I kept thinking, how can I incorporate this into like a road to a cure, right? Let the good times roll on the road to a cure. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm gonna take my New York literary license down a good time road to a cure. So, question, who here uses like Waze or Google Maps when you're driving, right? Right, okay.
Everybody.
Okay, you enter your destination and you try to get from point A to point B, and you just like pray that the internet gods get you to that point without 15 different, recalculating routes, right? So, but the interesting thing about Waze is that it lets you know fellow Wazers on the road, it lets you know hazards on the road ahead, and it always tries to give you the best possible route. So I love Waze for that. We took it here. But most importantly, the journey isn't as easy as you think. So here's my version of let the good time roll down the road to a cure. So cue my wedding picture. Okay, wait a minute. Hey, mullets were popular. Mullets were popular. I loved your mullet, yes. All right, so I'm 22 years old in that picture. I married my husband, Mark, and we entered happily ever after into the Waze destination. And we rolled off down the highway of life. The good times began immediately with the birth of our son, Eric. July 17th, 1991. I know, I don't even look that old. But 1991, our son was born. And then I realized his mate and his model was Delta F508 and G542X. And I'm like, what's that? And the doctor explained, that's his cystic fibrosis mutations 2 that definitively diagnosed our son with cystic fibrosis.
At 22 years old, I had no idea what CF was. My husband didn't know either. So he asked the doctor, what is CF? How did he get CF? And how bad is CF? I will never forget the doctor who summed it up in one sentence. She said, cystic fibrosis is a fatal genetic disease. Then she went on to tell me that my little baby boy, his life expectancy would be 19. That was 3 years younger than I was at that very moment. I checked Waze and it said rerouting. So I did what any driver would do who's stuck at an impasse. I started searching for new routes. I looked and ooh, helicopter mom. That's the one I'm gonna take. And so the helicopter mom path went something like this. My beautiful baby boy, I'm gonna wrap him in a bubble. I'm gonna sterilize his world. I'm gonna bleach my house twice a day, probably 3. I am going to drench in Purell every single person in a 5-mile radius. I'm gonna give up my life, my friends, and of course my sanity. I will devote every single minute of every single day to his treatments, his medicine, his food, his doctors, and oh, those insurance companies. I am going to limit who he's going to play with. And I am going to cry every day because life isn't fair. And I'm gonna live in fear of every single what if that can possibly happen to him. And I am gonna go all Taylor Swift on him and never, ever, ever, and I mean ever, let him out of my sight. Super tight mother-son bonding. Who remembers Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho? Truth be told, you know, helicopter mom wasn't so bad. I mean, after all, my house was spotless. Oh my God. And I had mastered organizational skills. And at 19 months, his lungs, oh, perfect lungs. And I say 19 months because on March 13th, 1993, his sister, Jenna, was born. She too had that make and model G542X and Delta F508. She too was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, that fatal genetic disease. I rechecked Waze. I said, please hold recalculating route. Unlike her brother, Jenna's lungs started having difficulties before she was 1 year old. She was hospitalized. Her brother Eric, his lungs still pristine. And for the next 13 years, I got off that helicopter mom path and I became just plain mom. I let them maneuver their own lives. I let them plot their own course. I balanced between being an erotic control freak, because that's what I am, and I tried my best to be a fun and spontaneous and an involved mom. We were on a road to live. We let the good time roll every chance we got. We lived in spite of CF. We charted our own path, we created our own road, but at some point CF would always rear its ugly head. And though both kids had CF, their expression was dramatically different. My daughter's expression was way more severe. From 1993 to 2006, she was hospitalized 15 times. And back in the day, that meant 3 to 4 weeks living in a hospital, where we had around-the-clock IV antibiotics, nutritional supplements, and a rigorous course of chest physical therapy. By age 5, she needed a feeding tube surgically placed in her stomach to meet 4,000 caloric requirements that she had. By age 11, she lived with oxygen. By age 12, Jenna's lung function had plummeted to 19%. And in October of 2006, she was evaluated and accepted for a double lung transplant. That life-saving transplant never happened. My good times were obliterated. And on December 4th of 2006, my worst possible fear happened. My biggest nightmare materialized. My daughter Jenna, taken just 2 months before she moved up to heaven, passed at the age of 13 due to complications of what this disease can do. And there I stood at a standstill for an indefinite amount of time. I didn't care about the destination anymore. I didn't care about anything. Eventually, I looked down at Waze, and it said, proceed to route for guidance. And there I was, completely broken on the side of the road, devastated with no direction. Still, there was no cure. Still, my son had cystic fibrosis. And so did 30,000 others who were still fighting for their lives, still trying to navigate their future. They were still trying to live. Eventually, I proceeded to the route for guidance, and I got back on the road. In my rearview mirror, I saw the infrastructure that had been occurring since 1991. I saw the scientific research, the antibiotics, the drugs, the therapies that had enabled me to have my daughter for those 13 years. And that was keeping my son alive. Then, in 2007, in the middle of that CF highway, at a CF conference in DC, Bob Bell, the president and CEO of the CF Foundation at the time, had a blue pill in his hand. And to be clear, that blue pill was from Vertex and not Pfizer. I know where your head's at. Bob raised that pill high, and he smiled wide, and he hedged his excitement by saying, this is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. But this drug, he said, raising the pill even higher for everybody to see, he said, this drug has the potential of stopping CF at its progression and controlling cystic fibrosis. 5 years after that conference and millions of dollars later, the FDA approved that Vertex drug, VX-770, which we now all know as Kalydeco. And that was January of 2012. And though we were all ready to wave that checkered flag and call it a win, we soon learned that that amazing drug would only benefit the model of G551D, which was 4% of all those with cystic fibrosis, leaving 96% without a drug. You needed to be a G551D to benefit from Kalydeco. My son was not. You see, CF has over 2,000 mutations, makes and models, has 2,000 mutations to address. And we were losing beautiful souls like my daughter to CF every single day. You gotta trust that navigational system sometimes. I looked down and it said shorter route found. With money and time, we were able to buy more science, and it arrived at a faster rate. FDA approved the next Vertex drugs, Orkambi in 2015, and then Symdeko in 2018. These new drugs would now benefit 50% of all those with CF. Still, none of them helped my son. His make and model still didn't qualify. I got another Waze alert. It said hazard on road ahead. You see, CF is a progressive disease, and it's a deadly disease. And without those life-saving drugs, my son was being evaluated for a liver and a lung transplant. And I couldn't go down this road again. Just when I was about to shut down for good, turn the engine off, get out of the car, and focus on what good time I had left for my son, I got another alert. And this time it was from other Wazers who were on the same journey I was. And the alerts were, we got you. We're in this together. We won't stop. While I stayed idle in fear of the future of my son, they kept raising money and awareness and doing events like this. They continued the research, the clinical trials, and folks like you who never gave up. You never gave up. And on October 21st, 2019, I got to read one of the best signs on that CF highway. It was that the FDA had approved a new drug called Trikafta. You only needed one copy of Delta F508 to benefit. 90% of all those with CF have that one copy of Delta F508, my son included. My son, at age 28, finally got his drug. Within weeks of taking this miracle drug, he was off any potential transplant list. And for the first time since he was 7 years old, I got to see him run. And he ran right into the arms of his wife. Very next year, my grandson Easton was born. My son now could be the husband and the father he had always dreamed he would be. He could and would be there for them, hopefully always. He is 32 years old. He has a full-time job as a financial advisor. He has an improved golf score, so he's more happy about that. And as of August 31st, he has a new baby daughter, my granddaughter Everly, born just months ago. It is great, but fellow Wazers, fellow warriors, the road doesn't end here. The biggest problem ahead is that our GPS is still rerouting. It's still recalculating. There are still 10% of those living with cystic fibrosis without a drug to fight the root cause of this disease. There are also many who are unable to even take the current drugs due to severe reactions and side effects. And there are those who have had so much chronic and permanent damage due to CF that they are in a constant fight just to breathe. Last March, I attended a funeral of a really good friend's daughter. She was 28. She was on Trikafta. It just didn't work as well as it hoped. She had chronic and permanent lung damage. She needed more. We have not arrived at our destination. We have not gotten there. Folks, here's the thing. Okay, so we're on a road to cure that 90%. It's not the same road that's going to take us to the 100%. There are still those 10% that are living without a drug, without any drug to fight the root cause of the disease. So picture this. It's like driving a car from New York to LA, and you're 90% of the way there, but you have to get up to Hawaii to save the other 10%, and you can't drive there. So what do? You have to find a new way. And that's what we're doing. The researchers, the scientists, the fundraisers, we are building that uncharted road that will bridge us from that 90% to that 100%. We can't leave them there without a cure. We can't let them down. We cannot let another mother bury a child because of this disease. Let's do this together. Let's get everyone to that destination. Let's give everyone that chance at happily ever after. Let's give them more. I was there when Bob Bell held that pill. I was there when my son took that first pill of Trikafta. And by golly, I'll be there when CF does stand for
Cure found!
Way to be on board. We are on that road together to let the good times roll. And I know the road has a lot of places where people can exit, and they have. They can get their drug and be on their merry way, and God bless them. They could be passengers along for the ride, be invited here for a dinner, have a few drinks, enjoy the evening, that's fine. Or, here's a thought. We could do it together, and we can ride out this best story in medicine where we did more, where we collectively crossed that finish line, where we didn't leave anyone behind, where we did it together, where you did it for everyone, for all, 100%. It's up to me, it's up to you, and it's for them. Picture, there we go. Well, I see it over there, there we go. That's who we're doing it for. We're doing it for them.
I would just like to thank you for allowing a New Yorker to come into your woods here and share my story. I would like to thank you for being a part of this incredible journey for 27 years. You guys have been doing this. When I couldn't do it, you guys were still doing it. And just remember what the great Ray Charles has said. He said, don't sit there mumbling, talking trash. If you want to have a ball, you gotta spend some cash. Now let's get together and let the good times roll for everyone. Thank you.
Margaret, thank you so very much.